Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of the Auto Experience series. Today we're reviewing a 1993 Pontiac Bonneville SSE Supercharged. So yes, finally! I've owned nearly 60 cars in my lifespan, and this is the first supercharged car I've owned. So did I do it right? I don't know. That's debatable. But anyway, this Bonneville in the 1993 year is the 9th generation of the Bonneville for Pontiac. It's a long-running nameplate that's gone over many great changes over the years and has been a really good car, or was a really good car for Pontiac. Of course, now defunct. Used to be GM's Excitement division, and they really were. I am a huge advocate of Pontiac. Boy, their plastic cladding really just put me over the edge and made me love them even more, and this car delivers. This is probably the most plastic cladding per capita per vehicle you'll get on a Pontiac, so that is awesome. But anyway, yes, there was a model above this called the SSEI. That one came default with a supercharger and a ton of features, and I mean a metric ton of features. We're going to be going over all the features on this car because this SSE is optioned as an SSEI, which was crazy you could do that, including the supercharger. So this does have the famous, reliable, rock-solid GM 3800, that 3.8 liter V6 with a supercharger bolted on top. Power is 205 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque. Kinda laughable nowadays for a big V6 with a supercharger to make just over 200 horsepower, but this thing gets up and goes. Definitely in the early 90s, that was a good amount of power to have on tap. Yeah, we're gonna have a blast. This car has, I've been looking for one of these too, and we'll get into the market in a little bit, but I've been looking for one for a long time. They are hard to find. You don't see any at all driving around. It's a pretty large vehicle, a little boaty in proportions, but handling is pretty decent for what it is, and speed is pretty decent for what it is. So those are huge marks for the Bonneville, especially the SSE and SSEI with supercharger. Even the naturally aspirated 3800 got pretty beefy at the end of its span. Another long-running engine for GM. But man, what a cool car. It just features, I mean, heads-up display to name a few. Seats with, I don't know, infinity adjustment levels. There's so many buttons. It's so hilarious. Nighttime sensing lights called Twilight Sentinel. Why aren't all auto headlights called Twilight Sentinel? Why didn't that become the Xerox of nighttime run lights? God, that's cool. Twilight Sentinel. Sounds like it should do more than that. But yeah, this one's fully featured out. It's wild. There's a tire inflator in the trunk. It has ride leveling suspension, which has fresh shocks in the back. So it's cool. I sit in the back seat when the car's parked, and you can hear the air pump run to raise it up. Also indicating that I probably could lose some poundage, but regardless, this car is just full of features market-wise. So you want to buy a Bonneville Supercharged. Now, they're all over the place. And what I mean all over the place, I mean price-wise. They are super rare. I looked for the better part of 5 years to find one. Usually the paint is shot, the maintenance history is iffy at best, and the interior tends to get thrashed, but this one's pretty good. I'd say overall this is like an 8.75 car, both interior, exterior, and mechanically. It's been well kept. One owner nearly its whole entire life, save for, I think, 2,000 miles, all owned by the original owner. God, that's cool. That is what makes it rare. And those are the kind of cars you should go after because, you know, it was maintenance taken care of before it became an issue. That's why the car looks the way it does. That's why the car runs the way it runs. So again, I've been looking for many years. Finally stocked one down and secured it. And I am so happy. This thing is a blast. It is a highway cruiser more than a canyon carver, which we're going to find out in the canyons right now. But it's cool. It does handle pretty well for what it is. But guys, these are cool cars. How much are you going to pay for a Bonneville SSE Supercharged if you can find one, or an SSEI of this vintage, the 9th gen? I'd say for one that's sorted and drivable, you're looking at $4 grand, upwards of $7 grand. So not a lot, but the challenge really is finding one, and finding one that's been maintained and is drivable. That's going to be where your real challenge lies. Not paying, like securing the funds, but securing the car that you want to have. Now, later iterations did come. They ran the 3800 for a while with a supercharger option, but you could get a North Star derived V8 in the very last iteration. I'd avoid that one. I know there's some diehard North Star fans out there, but nah, I think the 3800 is the way to go. I mean, up there in the history books is one of GM's best engines, and it's got a cult following for a reason, and they're super easy, accessible to work on. Parts are cheap. But yeah, that's about how much you're going to pay. So start looking. These things are squirreled away. Sometimes you can get them. Probably serve as a great daily, serves as just a great all-around car. Upkeep is cheap, reliable. What else can we say? Fun, fast, good looking, in my opinion. I think it's a cool looking car. It gets a lot of attention. You wouldn't think a beige Bodie sedan from the early 90s GM products would get a lot of attention. But this thing, everywhere I go, it just draws a crowd. People love it, and I love it too. But let's see if it can perform as good as its condition looks. So we're gonna run it through some objective tests, acceleration, all that fun stuff. See if it's got some pep in its step. On to the objective tests. With the Bonneville SSE Supercharged on the scales, let's get that curb weight and front and rear balance. With a curb weight of just over 3,500 pounds, our 93 Bonneville weighs about the same as two Geo Metro convertibles stacked on each other. Translation, it's a pretty hefty sedan. With nearly 65% of the weight resting over the front half of the vehicle, again, very indicative of a front-wheel drive, front-engine platform, let's hope these acceleration results kind of balance out these not-so-good scale results. A cursory glance at the Bonneville SSE would give you a strong impression of how this big old slab of Americana is going to wallow on anything but a straight highway. But my friends, you are mistaken. The SSE comes equipped from the factory with firmer shocks, larger sway bars, and a strut tower brace, all improvements over the base Bonneville. Steering is quite fast, and the car remains pretty damn flat when hustled through corners. It's not sports car tight, but far better than it should be. The brakes are competent, but somewhat underwhelming given the drums in the rear. Overall, the SSE Supercharged is a fun hoon machine that really shines at highway poles when the supercharger can wind out. The Bonneville SSE Supercharged is, in my personal, but often bereft of taste, opinion, a fine-looking automobile. If you're not a fan of overindulgent plastic cladding, politely slide out of my DMs. I can just picture the clay model in the design studio, with each designer walking up and carving another body line. Also, the studio has 20 designers. I really dig on the long but very sleek profile. It looks like a purpose-built plastic cladded missile. It's an incredibly fun car to just admire. Every angle has so much, maybe too much at times, detail to take in. Those fog lights though, two center mass cherries on top of an already diabetes-inducing, sweetly styled ride. Welcome to the Bonneville Lounge. Massively padded and infinitely adjustable seats await the planning of your rear. A child's play calculator serves as your adjustment control center. So you enjoy buttons, we've got you covered elsewhere. Overtaking feature creep, we've landed in feature critical mass here. There are so many things going on. Heads-up display, an actually useful and cool feature, is along for the adventure. Twilight Sentinel is always on patrol, warding off travel through darkness. Worried about not having John Davis's approval on instrumentation? Bonneville has you once again. Gauges occupy nearly 75% of the dash area, with highlights including a Star Fox-themed compass, a graphic readout for any doors open, lights out, or other issues, and a boost gauge. What an amazing cabin. GM's 3800 V6 is one of their greatest engines of all time. This is not a whispered rumor in shadowy automotive circles. It's just plain fact. Reliable, easy to maintain, and having cheap parts makes it a greatest hit for sure. Strapping a supercharger on boosts the enjoyment level. Rated at 205 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque, performance from this mill is not sluggish. Boost hits with an immediacy and hangs on through the revs to motivate this beige bomber down the road. All of these interesting features can only make a car so cool, but it's the GM 3800 that makes it a worthwhile machine. Performance and reliability walk hand in hand with the Bonneville SSE Supercharged. Reining in all that torque is left up to the 4-speed Hydromatic automatic gearbox built under GMC. Gearing is fairly aggressive for the time, and shifts actually snap off pretty sharply. There's even a perform shift button that allows revs to hang more and shifts to become somewhat more brisk. There's also something to be said about the chunky goodness of the shifter itself. Many times an automatic shift knob feels cheap and clickety. That's an industry term, but the shifter feel here offers positive forceful resistance when shifted. Is the Bonneville SSE Supercharged a true budget super sedan? Its acceleration numbers mirror that of my '89 Taurus show. The 3800 is less peaky, due of course to its larger displacement and supercharger, but lacks that special feeling present in the Yamaha plant of the SHO. That being said, the Supercharged Bonnie was still one of the faster American sedans of the time, and incredibly well appointed. These were not cheap automobiles with an MSRP around $30,000, equating to $61,000 in today's money, not cheap, and were bolted together quite well. More of a grand tourer than true sports car, the Bonneville brought a lot to the table for a GM product. In a division that proudly proclaimed bringing excitement to the party, the Bonneville SSE Supercharged rolled 3 kegs into that party, one filled with performance, one filled with style, and the last filled with luxury. In my books, I classify it as a true budget super sedan, if only it was easier to find a clean one today.